Oh, I guess recording in progress. That's what it just said. So welcome everyone to, where are we? Night number 2 of our 4 nights of watching and discussing the 4 Matrix movies. Some of you may have been here last week. If not, we'll have a very quick review of a couple of the key points that kind of go through all of the movies so that you're not lost right from the beginning. This is a couple of things that are important. So if most of you might know me a little bit, briefly, what you need to know, other than being, what's that crazy as Morpheus, right? That's one of my favorite lines in the 3rd movie. Morpheus is crazy. Yeah, I know. So Matrix has been kind of my big hobby, if you will, for the last 20 years. And I have watched these movies a whole lot of times and been kind of teaching classes and writing articles and websites and things all around the Kabbalistic background to these movies. And basically, you can take Kabbalistic background to anything in the world, but there are some things that, my little dog's acting up here. There are some things that express these ideas more than others, usually in works of human creativity, various things, books, music, right, and movies, etc. But I haven't found anything comes remotely close to these films. I would say if you were going to try to take as many of these ideas as you could and put them into some kind of movie, this is what you'd get, because literally there's hundreds of things, and they're not vague concepts and like a random philosophical idea. There's a lot of that out there, and some of that's interesting. Now, this is literally hundreds of things, and we can source everything. It's all interconnected. It's all part of one framework, and it's all part of a timeline. And all that I just mentioned is expressed in these various texts of Kabbalah. And again, as I said earlier, if you weren't here, this is when I use the K word, I'm talking about the stuff that has connection and tradition within Torah literature, within spiritual literature related to the Bible. That's what it's connected to and grounded in. But it's like the deeper level of expressing this stuff. Okay, let's see here. So we are looking at the 2nd movie tonight, Matrix Reloaded. And I said this last time to folks, and I'll repeat it. I just scribbled on my screen somehow. I don't know how I did that. Or did someone else do that? Please don't scribble on my screen. No, undo. No, somebody else did that. That's weird. Okay. Oh, I think I must have left one of the controls on. I think somebody accidentally scribbled on the screen. All right. Hold on a second. I don't know how to make that go away, so I guess I'll just leave it for now. Okay. All right. So as I told people last week, these movies are R-rated. Be aware. This one in particular has a little bit more sexually explicit stuff. So if that's bothersome to you, it's pretty much at the beginning, not the very beginning, but in the first 30 minutes of this movie. It's nothing, vulgar, but it's a little bit, and I try to respect everyone regarding that. So if you've got the little kids watching this, maybe not, but if you're aware with the movie, you know what I'm talking about. It's just a little bit, it's nothing that bad, but just letting folks know ahead of time in case you are unaware completely. I don't want anybody to be offended or shocked. And also, if you're not aware, there's a website behind all this. Website is called Matrix4Humans.com. That's a number 4 in the middle. It's kind of like the thing down at the bottom with the Facebook group, only it's Matrix4Humans.com. And on there, you'll find dozens and dozens of articles that even get into some of these topics we talk about even deeper. And I'll be adding more to it, which is what's nice is, doing these rooms like this, new stuff always comes up. Just by researching and getting ready for these things and talking to people, there's always like more and more ideas. So that website just keeps growing and growing, which is really cool. Okay, let's see if we can move this slideshow right along here. There we go. Okay, you should be looking at a different screen now with a chart. And this is a chart we brought up last week, and it's one of those things I just want to review real quick so you weren't in the dark. I still have this writing all across the screen here. I don't know how it got there. So hold on a second. Okay, I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to reshare. And hopefully, there we go. It went away this time. Okay. So I don't know how that had happened, but and I don't even know if you could see it, but I had like scribbling all over the screen. All right, so there's two basic frameworks behind the movie. If you understand these, you're halfway there. And the same two basic frameworks that Kabbalah teaches about our own world, our own existence, okay? And the first one we covered last week, and we're just gonna cover it really fast here, and then we'll introduce the second one a little bit. And this first one is that there's what's called there's four worlds of existence and a world before existence, pre-existence. And these parallel the Matrix movies. The way Kabbalah explains it is we have our world that we live in right now. Look around you, if you can smell it, see it, touch it, right, hear it. This is our physical world, includes everything you can see with a microscope or a telescope. This is our physical reality. And of course, there's a spiritual dimension within this world. But nonetheless, this is our primary level of existence, and most people don't think of anything else other than this world. And of course, that parallels the Matrix world in our story, and that everybody thinks that that's all there is to reality. So that's the first level of our world and the first level of the Matrix story. Then beyond our world, there's a level of spiritual existence that we're taught has entities in it, generally called angels, which in Hebrew, the word malakim is messengers, okay? And they give messengers, meaning someone that travels with some type of information or duty, right? And we'll see what that means in a minute. And parallel to that, in the Matrix story is the program world. And as we'll see, the angelic world has a lot to do with, interacting with our world, even influencing it, carrying out certain things. Same with the programs in the Matrix world. So that's the second parallel and second world. That middle box, you see the little white boxes. The lower world is called Asiya, which means making. And then the next world is Yetzirah, which means forming or formation. And then above that, there's another higher up level of the spiritual world called Buriya, which is creation. And everything from there down is part of creation, but this is the highest level of creation. And this is the world that kind of supervises and controls everything above the angelic world. So it's referred to in different traditions by names such as powers or forces or archangels, like overseeing angels. And that's the world of Buriya, that it's part of creation, but the highest level and kind of oversees and controls everything. And that's the level of the oracle in the Matrix stories. And we'll get to these more later. This is a very quick overview, okay? And then outside of creation, but part of existence still, there's a level that's beyond creation, but just part of existence, is the level that we would see at the very beginning of the Torah that says, in the beginning, God, and then the next word is created, which is bara, where you get Beriah from. Okay, so there's something before creation that exists that we can relate to, and it's associated with a creator, okay? And that's the level of Atzilut, which means nearness, and I'll tell you what that means in a second. And this is the level of the architect, and we're gonna meet him tonight in the movie for the first time. All right, so these are your four basic levels in the Matrix world and in our world of existence, okay? And then before anything, literally before anything you can think of, there's a concept of the creator that we can't understand, we can't fathom. It's simply referred to, because we really can't refer to it, so we refer to it as Ein Sof, without end. It's like the infiniteness of God, and we can't even put a descriptive term, because if you say something, it means it's not something else, but there's nothing in existence yet. It's just this, what we would call like a pure singularity. It's actually in Kabbalistic text called the Source of Sources, which is kind of interesting and ironic, because in the movie, this mystical, unknown, beyond, out of the picture thing is called the Source in the Matrix movies. And as we'll see later tonight, although the architect is called the creator of the Matrix, and he is, there's something that created the architect. So he's not the ultimate creator. Same with our own concepts or ideas about God. Those are great, but they're puny compared to what we don't know. Okay, that's one way of putting it. Corresponding to these levels of existence are what's called levels of the soul. And it's taught in Kabbalistic texts that our souls actually have 5 levels, and these are the levels that Neo in our movie will go through, and we'll touch on this a little bit too, in the movies, in each movie, and also movie by movie. What I mean by that is the first movie last week was very much concerned with the Matrix world, that learning what it is, that it's not the real world, and Neo figuring that out, and all of that. So it was very much, first movie was very much related to the Matrix world, and related to what's called the first level of the soul, which is called the Nefesh. Okay, and now Neo, having done certain things to, he accomplished certain things to move forward. That he learned certain things, he corrected certain things about his views and behaviors. He now moves to the next level of the soul in this movie. That's called Ruach, and this is the purple level there, Reloaded. Okay, that's the movie Reloaded on the left. And so we're primarily dealing with this level of the soul now for Neo's journey, the path of the one, as it's called. And it's also the level of the angels in our, in our hierarchy of things. And it's related to, as I said earlier, the level of programs. Now these things exist in all the movies, but every movie has like its own focus, So what we have tonight is a whole lot about this program level. And we're going to see all kinds of things that we didn't see in the first movie. It all blows up here. It's amazing how many things that they throw at us in this movie. So it's a very complex movie. I would probably say it has the most material to look at of all 4. It's really got a lot of stuff. So, and that's the nature of, this realm, this realm with the angels going back and forth and all, and conveying messengers, as they're called. And then above that, as we said, is the level of the oracle. That's the next level of the soul, called the neshama. And this will apply to the third movie more, because there's several people have conversations with the oracle in the third movie, not just Neo. And those conversations are very relevant and they're very conceptual. So we're at that third level. And again, Neo has to get through this week's stuff before he gets to next week's stuff. That's how it progresses. And then the fourth movie will be more focused around the architect. If you've seen it, he's renamed the analyst, but it is mostly around him. So each movie has a focus that is related to one of the characters, or I should say, one of the elements, and as well as the Kabbalistic model. Ironically, and someone mentioned this earlier, for those of you, there are some people who follow a course of study around the Torah, and every week there's a reading that you do out of the Bible. And last night's reading was about this ladder of Jacob, which is the angelic world, which is exactly what we're covering tonight in this Matrix discussion. So totally unintentional. I won't say it's coincidence, as Morpheus says, there's no coincidences, but that today's, by Torah reading, Bible reading, Parsha it's called, has everything to do with tonight's discussion, as we're at that level. So that's kind of weird and interesting all at once. So, all right, so this is what we're talking about here. And I'm going, again, outside, will there be a fifth movie? Who knows? Because we're really at the stage here where we're almost past everything, back to the source, which was the whole purpose of this movie, as we'll mention as well. All right, so this is the basic structure, architecture, if you will, of the Matrix story, these levels of existence, these worlds of existence and levels of the soul. So you got to kind of keep those in mind, okay? Now, what I'm showing you here, and I think what I'm going to do is show you this real quick, and then take a quick look at 1 minute of the movie and then come back to this, okay? Because these levels of existence I just mentioned are actually shown to us at the very beginning of this movie before it really starts, okay? This is the kind of like very weird, strange stuff that they have hidden in these films. And if we go back for a second, let me go back. I don't need to go back. Let me see here. I think I outlined it here. Oh yeah, here. So if you remember these different levels of existence, so going from the top down, if you're thinking from God's perspective, the creator's perspective, down to us or down to the Matrix world, okay? So you have this idea that that level of existence before anything was really created, that everything was in one point, if you will, one packed into one place, like it, single point, and that's associated with that level of Atzilut, of the architect and existence before creation. Then, and it's kind of like the Big Bang Theory, if you think about it like that, right? Then, boom, everything explodes into creation, potentially, right? All of these things come out of this single point, okay? And then it's brought down, which is our third world of Yetzirah, and then finally made. And this process, you'll see this process occur in different ways, but I wanted to just take a quick look and show you this in the movie, because they show this at the first minute or so. You'll see the introduction of the movie, and you'll see the singular point here in the top left, and that's at the 50-second mark, okay? Everything will go to this point, and then you'll see this explosion, you'll see it brought down, and it starts to take form. The world of Yetzirah, remember, means formation, and then it's finally made, which is Asiya, it means world of making in the time clock, all right? So I'm gonna take 1 second here and pause this part and show you this. I'll start it probably about at the 40-second mark, right before. So watch for the point, then the explosion, then the formation of things as they descend, by the way, right? The whole concept of this world is like the angels coming down, everything's coming down, and then finally made. So let me pause this and hold on a second, share screen. Where's my movie? Boom, okay. Okay, let me make sure I have enough volume for you guys. I'm only gonna play like about a minute here so you can see what I was just talking about. Get the volume up a little higher. Okay. All right, so you should be able to hopefully hear and see this if I didn't mess this up here. I think it's about we're about 30 seconds in, so. All right. I don't usually talk about it, but I'm like, coming up that singular point in just a couple seconds right here. So now we're here, now we're coming backing out down this way. Everything exploding a little bit. And we're heading back our direction. And then descend. Part here, where it descends here, into our world of physicality in the form of a time clock. Okay, pretty weird, I know, but that's just interesting that this concept of these four worlds that's foundational to the Kabbalistic teachings and foundational to the movies is actually here. Reduce movie volume if you're gonna. I won't talk over it normally. Sorry. I just, that part there, I was kind of like doing the play-by-play. So no, normally I just play the movie and be quiet. So anyhow, that's just an interesting little tidbit. Let me go back to our little slideshow here. We've got a few slides before we start the first part of the movie. I do break the movie up into 4 sections. They're roughly a half hour or so each. Let's see, share screen. Back to, where are we? PowerPoint. Okay, we should be back here. So anyhow, this is an important thing to keep in mind. And then as we mentioned, these levels run, here we go. These levels run parallel to what are called levels of the soul. Okay, so each of these levels of the soul kind of has an association or parallel to these worlds of existence. And the first movie, as I said, has to do with that first level of the soul, Nefesh. This one, we're at the level of Ruach. And the level of Nefesh is kind of like the level every human being has a Nefesh, or you wouldn't be alive. Ruach is where people start to think about and struggle with spiritual concepts. And we move up, we move down, there's all kinds of things. There's a lot of volatility, and that's what this level's about. That's why the whole concept of angels on the ladder and Jacob's dream up and down, it's the level full of volatility. And another main point here is that in each one of these levels of the soul is connected to all five of them. So you have the nefesh last week, but you have the nefesh within the nefesh, the ruach within the nefesh, you know, the neshama within the nefesh, and so on. And now we're at the ruach level. So we're going to start again at the nefesh of the ruach. Well, let me put that on the screen. I got these bullet points here. Okay. So the nefesh of the ruach, and so on. And in each of the movies, by the way, it follows this pattern. All of the movies, Neo's asleep at the beginning of the movie. You'll notice that last week at the beginning, knock, knock, Neo, and next week the same thing, and tonight. And then he's like a bit of an awakening and curiosity, right? Then he enters this next level of the ruach, which is the level, as I said, of a lot of volatility and curiosity and struggle and all of that. Okay, and it's also the ruach level is also the level of dreams, because it's in between the physical world and the heavenly world. So if you stop and think of dreams, they're part physical, right? Our brains and bodies, and then they're part spiritual. So this is called the level of dreams. And in this movie in particular, because we're at the ruach of the ruach here at this stage, you know, level 2 here in this movie, dreams are very, very significant in this movie. And then in each of the movies, once he goes through this level of struggle, the level of ruach, he then comes to the level of neshama, which is the level you make your deep spiritual connection, which in all the movies is represented by him connecting with the oracle. So he goes from curiosity, waking up, to struggles, etc., to meeting with the oracle in all the movies, all slightly different ways, of course, because he's moving upward. And then after that, after he meets with the oracle in each movie, he gets a better, deeper sense of his connection to all human beings. It's not just about him anymore and being the one, but it's about his mission and everything involved with other people. And that evolves through all the movies too. And then in this particular movie, he's going to meet the architect, who's at that next level up too. Now the architect is present in every movie, of course, you just don't see him. Although there was a hint in the first movie, because at the scene where he was in the office with the being questioned by Agent Smith and the other two guys, that nasty scene where they put the bug in his belly button. You see at the beginning of that, someone's looking through all these computer screens, and you don't know who that is, but that's you find out in this movie, that's the architect. Anyhow, that's the level of connectivity to other people. So whereas like the level of neshama would be the height of personal consciousness, you can put it that way. And when you're talking about soul levels and advancing through soul levels, it's synonymous with the vocabulary around consciousness. So advancing in consciousness, advancing in your soul level, just think of them as the same. So personal consciousness would be the peak of that would be the neshama level. But then there's a level of collective consciousness where we all meet. That singularity we mentioned earlier, that single point there, everything is in there. That's where we are, our origin, if you will, all of us. And that's this level of soul level of chaya, which means life. And then in each of the movies, he gets to the 5th level within the level. So this would be the yechida of ruach. Remember, everything is ruach at this level, ruach of the soul. Don't get this confused with other ways where ruach is used. But here we have the yechida, which means singular. So remember that idea of God that we don't understand, just a pure singularity. So yechida, okay, means singular. And when this level is when he actually in some way just becomes completely it's called like self-abnegation, self-denial, where he's willing to and does put his life on the line for everyone. And when he reaches this point in each movie, it's basically, it's kind of like his connection to the next movie. He starts the nefesh level of the next higher level in the next movie. So this repeats through all the movies. These 5 stages actually repeat exactly like this in all 5 movies. And next week, as you'll see, he wakes up again and he's in a train station, but that's next week. So this is the 5 levels of the soul. They parallel these levels of existence and pre-existence. And it's all about what the journey or the path of the one in our journey in life is moving up of this levels of getting closer to the source, closer to our creator, etc. Okay. I know this is a lot of stuff, and it's being recorded and it's going to be all redone. Anyhow, I'm going to be doing all these videos in this little studio, like nice little 15-minute chunks. And it's on the website. So, you know, if this is going kind of quick, just hang in there. It is recorded. You'll be able to play it at your leisure, and we'll have questions and answers in the Facebook group. So don't worry if it's parts of this go a little bit quick, okay? All right. Now, that was our first template from last week, these levels of existence and soul. That's the first big template. As I said, there are two. The second big template has to do, excuse me, has to do with what are called sephirot, which are simply emanations through which God interacts with and relates to existence, okay? And these have been developed over centuries by these sages, and they're all rooted, as I said, in the Bible, in the Tanakh, and so they're not pulled out of thin air. And they're not only how God interacts with us or with existence, but they're also, there's aspects of these that are within all of us because we're made in the image of God, we're told in Genesis, right? So these emanations are what make us up as well. So there's different dimensions to this. And in the movie, they also represent different characters. And I don't want to say that each character has only one emanation. Let's get that straight. All of us have the entire array of these emanations within us. It's just some of us are more one thing than the other. That's what gives us our personalities and the way we behave. Some of us are more physically oriented, some are more emotional, some are more intellectual, some are more judgmental, which is on the left, some are more, open on the right, and so on. So, but this is the building blocks, if you will, of who we are and everything in existence. But it's, like I said, it's also connected to the characters. And although the human characters in the movie, like us, do have, the whole array of emanations, and so they're complicated. Generally speaking, you'll see more of one thing in a character, or maybe two. I simply plotted them out on this graph for now, just to give you an idea. There are also programs that take the form of bodily figures in the movies, like the Oracle and Architect and Agent Smith, etc. And generally speaking, the programs are more singular dimensional. They're one thing and not so much several things, compared to the humans, who are, like us, more complicated. So, as I said, this diagram on the right is just a representation of the more dominant things that you'll see, especially in this movie. Last week we had six characters we dealt with. There's 10 new ones added this week. So this is another reason this is complicated. We talked last week that Trinity, if you look at the bottom, Trinity represents the feminine presence in the world, the divine presence, Shekhinah, which is feminine in the world, and is like in the major storyline, she's like the divine bride to the divine groom, which is, of course, Neo. That's the whole love story that this bunch of movies is around. Morpheus is the connection for people coming out of the Matrix. Down where you see Trinity, Malkuth, that's the Matrix world down there, more or less. So just to avoid confusion, this array of these emanations, these sephirot, these 10 that you see, they exist at each of the 4 levels of existence, but they exist like differently. They're different in the physical world than they are in the angelic world, but the concepts are similar. Having said that, certain ones connect more specifically with the different worlds of existence. So Malkuth down at the bottom, although it's in every one of the worlds of existence, it's primarily related to the lowest, our physical world. So it's like direct relationship there. What's more complicated is the one we're in now, tonight. I said tonight's gonna be complicated. Tonight, this mixed world, the world of Jacob's dream, the ladder, the angels going up and down. It's called the mixed realm, by the way, this world that we're dealing with now. This is the world where things get tricky for us. And one reason that in the Torah, there are things that say not to fool around with like divination and witchcraft and things like that, because that's like trying to figure things out in this mixed realm, and it's never a good path. But anyhow, this is these 6 emanations that you see that in the little box, the smaller box there, the 6 of them, circles. They are like a group together. They represent aspects of the masculine to the feminine below. So Neo is in the middle there, but all 6 of them are part of masculine or the divine bridegroom, or the son versus the daughter aspect. And then above that, and we'll get to this stuff in a second here, above that, you have a couple characters. One, we met the Oracle, who is related, she's called the mother of the Matrix. We'll hear that tonight. And that's Bina, understanding. And the architect we'll meet today he's the father, and that relates to Chokhmah, wisdom. So those things exactly parallel the Matrix movies to what is taught about these things. And then above and beyond that, Keter represents kind of represents the unknown beyond. All right, Keter means crown, so it's not part of the body, so it's like not attached, but but there, and that relates to the source. So this is the basic diagram for most of the characters that more or less follow. Okay, generally speaking, the ones on the left are more to do with restriction and judgment, which is not a bad thing because it's necessary for growth. The ones on the right tend to be more proactive and open, and the middle is more the column of balance, if you will. Okay. And there's a couple of characters you'll see there that are not directly aligned with any of the circles, Seraph and Keymaker. They're very similar. They both act as a doorway, if you will. Seraph is the character that Neo has to go past to get to the Oracle in this movie. And Keymaker is a character they need to get to the architect. So they both, and Seraph has keys too, by the way. It's kind of interesting. And there's a lot of verbiage in Kabbalistic literature on keys and gateways and the heavenlies and all of that stuff. So, and they pull some really fantastic text out of for that too. So this is an idea of some of the new characters we're going to look at really quick here too. But this is the other template. So the first template is the template of the worlds of existence, which is also the levels of the soul. It's those 4 levels plus the hidden 5th one. That's your first template. And then this is the second template, which is the 10 emanations or 10 sephirot. Or within us, we would call them 10 attributes within people, okay? And they're all kind of synonymous words. So those are the 2 major templates of Kabbalah regarding all of his existence. And they just happen to also be the 2 major templates behind the Matrix movies, all right? So if I haven't lost you so far, you're doing pretty good because this is half of it, well, sort of, This is a big part of it, is understanding that these 2 templates, okay? And as I said, the middle one, or this world, I shouldn't say middle one, the world we're talking about tonight, the second level of the world of Yetzirah, which is the angelic world or the program world, is extremely complicated. And you can kind of look at the diagram and see that all the other worlds relate to one emanation, but this one relates to 6 of them. And that gives you an idea that it's complicated. And this is the level that we work on to resolve things, okay? And bring everything down into the lowest one, Malkut. If there are any Stephen Covey fans out there, Stephen Covey was an author who wrote a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The parallels are amazing because he breaks his 7 habits down into 6 plus 1, and the 6 are the ones you work on, and they're identical to these, by the way. And then the 7th one is kind of putting it into daily practice. So, and we'll talk about that. If any of these weird side topics, like later tonight, if you want to stick around, we'll have time. I'm up all night, so you feel free to jot some notes down for yourself to say, ask him about Stephen Covey later, and we can talk about that afterwards, so we don't get in the way of the film too much. Okay. All right. So that's our 2 main templates. I don't even know what's next in this slide presentation. I got to move a couple windows around here. I start talking too fast and I forget to breathe. I'm not a professional speaker, Okay, here we go. So as I mentioned, we are at this level of Ruach tonight, okay? Or the world of Yetzirah, if we're talking about the worlds, right? Now, the first movie was all about the Matrix world, which is our world. And yes, that's kind of complex, but as I said, it gets really weird once you get away from this world and really start dealing with things in the spirit. That's a quote on the screen is from a musical performer, Matisyahu, and it's really interesting how well that fits to what we're getting into here tonight. And you'll see that as we get into this spiritual world of these angels or programs in the movie, you get the world of dreams, and we know how confusing dreams are, and you'll see right from the beginning starts with a dream. And Neo talks about how he doesn't know what to do now. He was a big hero in the first movie, but now what? So he's waiting for what's my path? What am I supposed to do? When he meets the Oracle, he even looks at her and says, how do I know to even to trust you? There's all of these issues that come up. The architect character you'll meet later on actually gives him, I guess, what I would call bad information, not on purpose, but it's his own limitation, which has actually caused a lot of confusion in the Matrix fan world. But there's all of these aspects of information that's kind of distorted or confusing in this realm. And that's why this is called a mixed realm. And there's a nifty line that the Oracle says, you'll catch it later, we'll talk about it, where she tells Neo that no one can see past the choices they don't understand. And that's true. We're all limited by what we know in the present. What I know about spirituality is what I know as of right now at this moment in time. Tomorrow, ask me, and I might know something different, you know? So it's an important concept because, you know, there's only one truth with God, and we're all striving toward it constantly. So don't think you ever know too much. It's a lesson, I guess. All right, so yeah, we're going to meet lots and lots of new entities, and keep clicking. All right. One of our favorite people, Agent Smith, we'll find him toward the beginning, and we'll see right away that one of the things we see different regarding like how this is all about programs is Agent Smith suddenly becomes many Agent Smiths in this movie. Sorry if you haven't seen it. You're going to get some spoilers. That's life. But you'll enjoy it. So Agent Smith becomes many Agent Smiths. Neo has a conversation later with the Oracle on a park bench. It's all about the program world. A new program called the Merovingian shows up. A new program called the Architect shows up. So you can see how this level is all about the program world. And Agent Smith also says some interesting things in this little mini conversation he has with himself. But I just wanted to point something out I did mention last week. You'll see when this car drives up, this is a close-up. Agent Smith's license plate on his car is IS 5416, which is one of several Bible verses that they put on license plates in these movies, by the way. And it's real interesting because his role as Smith, and this is the King James, I think, that uses the word Smith as opposed to blacksmith, but it's, you know, pretty interesting, is exactly this. He's a very accusatory figure, and the accusing angel in Torah literature, Kabbalistic literature, is HaSatan, the Satan, is the accusing angel, the accuser, the prosecutor. And he is that way. You saw that in the first movie, you'll see that throughout. He's got it in for humans, and he's accusing humans of being, you know, doing terrible things, and he's correct. You know, he's calling us out, and he does this throughout the movies, and he's the aspect of Gevurah, of judgment, that we saw on that a diagram earlier. Sorry, the diagram earlier with the Sephiroth. Excuse me. Okay, so this is Agent Smith, and it's just neat that they put this on the license plate for him. And this is one of the things that's been around the Matrix world for a while, but thought I'd mention it in case you guys weren't aware of it. But it's pretty cool. And he'll say stuff to Neo, how, you know, Neo killed him in the last movie, but he comes back. And we discussed this last week, how, you know, just trying to wipe out the darkness, wipe out the other side doesn't work in our reality. It's transforming it. That's what we're here to do. And that will come up in the third movie. Neo figures that out in the next movie. That and Smith figures it out, but too late, by the way. But you'll see here in this movie that the multiple Smiths show up, and Smith starts this process of trying to take over everything. And that's an interesting concept there too, that his own work of trying to take over everything is actually part of a plan that he isn't aware of. That shows up in the third movie. I'm getting too far ahead, sorry. But the other thing here too is there was some hint in the last movie that this wasn't the only Matrix or the first Matrix, and he'll say it again here to himself. You'll hear him say, well, it happened like before, and well, not exactly, says the other Smith. So you have this concept as well, that there are multiple matrices, and that number 6 will keep coming up. We saw those 6 emanations, et cetera, that are part of this this level. And this is in fact the 6th version of Neo, which completes the group, and which is why this movie ends next week as it does. I should say the story ends next week as it does, but then continues in the 4th movie. Couple more slides before we get to the movie here. Oh, this is the line from the Oracle that you'll hear. Neo goes looking for the Oracle, but he's looking for her in the same way, but he's not at that level anymore. He's still learning here that, you know, he's advanced. So what he has to attach himself to, what he has to figure out next is at a higher level. And this is symbolic in that he goes to find the Oracle in her old apartment. You'll see, he's like, where are you? Why aren't you here? Well, because Neo, you're no longer at that level, which she will remind him of when she sees him. She says, well, you'll see, I don't want to get too far ahead. She drops a couple hints in the conversation that he turned out all right and he's at a whole new level. So that's what's going on here with this this business. And he gets into the Oracle's apartment, and then a couple of people coming in here, a couple of characters that we're going to meet along the way. Hold on, I got to do something real quick. Give me 30 seconds, okay? Now I'm unmuted. I kept trying to unmute myself, and now I am, right? Okay. All right, so we're going to meet some new characters, as I said, in this movie. And a lot of these characters are primarily dealing with those lower Sephiroth, those lower emanations we saw, which are the ones that are more hands-on. They're less conceptual, and they're more like really down-to-earth, hands-on things going on, one of which is this kid named Kid. That's his actual name in the movie. In Kid, primarily, we're dealing with that emanation called Netzach, which was on the bottom right, which is on the proactive side, but by itself has no boundaries. And you'll see he's one of these people that you might meet in life that has no concept of personal space. At least at one level, that's his issue. But he's also someone who has his heart and mind in the right place. And you'll see how he balances that out through the movies, especially the next one after this. So he starts out as a person that has a very overactive Netzach that is not in balance with the left side, which is the side of restriction or boundaries. And you'll see that, like I said, in his physical personality and his behaviors. Then another character we're going to meet is on the other side, Locke. Kind of interesting name because he's locked into something here. And he's on the other side of Hode. And Hode is the corresponding side across from Netzach. Hode is the side of like analyzing and, restriction, but more like analysis and putting things into action. And he's the commander, he's Commander Locke. And unfortunately, he's disconnected from, if you remember what we talked about last week with Cypher being disconnected and his problems, Cypher became very full of doubt and ended up betraying people. Locke has a similar problem, but it manifests differently. Locke becomes very narcissistic. He's in charge. He doesn't admit when he's wrong. You'll see that. And, he's all about how to get things done, but he's not connected to the deeper picture. He doesn't care about faith. He has a whole speech where he tells off Morpheus what things he doesn't care about. All he cares about are these practical matters, and that's that. So he's Hode that is kind of isolated from the rest of the emanations. So that's the danger there, that Hode can be anything on the left side can make a person very narcissistic because it's all restriction. So you only think within your little corner of the world. Still letting people in here. Oh, hold on here. And it came in right. Co-host. Another person we're going to meet that's dealing with that lower group of Sephiroth, or like the lower triad, that you have Netzach on the bottom right, Hode on the bottom left, and Yesod in the middle, is Niobe. Okay, she's Captain Niobe in this movie. She does come back in the fourth movie, by the way. Okay, we'll be starting the movie in a minute, by the way. So Niobe, you'll find that she is very pragmatic, but she's actually, you could say, well balanced, if you will. It's kind of like Morpheus is one aspect of Yesod, of connecting people from below to above, from the matrix and out of the matrix. And Niobe represents someone who has a good balance between right and left. She's not a person of faith, but she's a person of trust, meaning, and you'll hear a line, I think it's in the third movie, she says she doesn't believe in the one, that concept, but she believes in Neo. And that's very much symbolic of Niobe. And there's a scene, I don't know if it's this movie or the next one, she's standing between two other guys, and she's right in the middle, representing the balance between the two, which is really interesting. So that's Niobe, she's very pragmatic. And we actually have some articles about her on the website from 2020, a couple of years ago, where she's one of the several characters where we discussed a couple of years ago her return in a leadership role in a future fourth movie, which is exactly what happened, because the way this should play out, it did play out. So, all right, let's see. We are getting near the last slide here, which is an interesting one. The people, the humans underground, are called Zion. The place is called Zion. And you'll notice in the speech, Morpheus gives this speech where he calls the people Zion. And this is the part I told you about earlier. It is an R-rated movie, and there's a dance scene here that gets a little bit not too bad. And then there's a scene with Trinity and Neo in bed together. And it's nothing too graphic, but I'm just letting people know ahead of time, okay? But they're very representational of what's going on here, because this is reflecting the state of the people here, the state of Zion, of the people. And you'll see that they are very united at a physical level. They just need to be elevated up from there. They're called Zion, but that's almost like futuristic or potential. In fact, in the last movie, Tank, the character Tank, said to Neo said, "What's Zion?" He says, "That's where the party will be one day." There's actual verse in the Tanakh, in the Bible, that talks about Zion being almost kind of like where the party will be one day. It's kind of interesting. But anyhow, they're being addressed as Zion, but it's also kind of like where they're being like elevated to. But what's neat is Morpheus, when he gives his little speech in the cave here, he addresses them where they're at. He doesn't start talking about all of these beliefs and other things. He comes right at them where they, meeting people where they're at in order to elevate them is a key principle. And Morpheus is in the role of what's called a Zadik, or the righteous one, elevating people up. And he knows how to talk to the people. So listen carefully in the manner in which he addresses them before the big dance scene that they do, because that can be a distraction. But his words and his choice of words, how he does it is very beautiful. It's very critical. It's a concept we brought up last week called Kiruv Richokim, and which is bringing close those who are far away. And that's really what he's trying to do here, is bring these people closer to truth. So, and his speech, as you'll see, is all about their past and energizing them together. And then it cuts away to Neo and Trinity go off alone together to be together, and their union, there's some symbolism behind that of the male and the female, coming together, joining together, is kind of symbolic of where the people need to go. The people need to elevate to the higher level, which is the people are the concept of the bride in Torah literature and in Kabbalistic literature, and in the New Testament too, right? The bride concept. So the people have to be elevated up toward the groom. That's kind of the symbolism here, where you'll see Trinity and Neo going off alone together to do their thing, So it's not just what is it called? Irrelevant sexual scene. It's very symbolic of what's going on and what needs to happen when you break it down like that. Okay. And what's interesting too is what follows after the break. So this section here is this is my attempt at humor here. After the dance scene, the big dance off, we'll pause, have a question or two that may come up, and then set up the next scene. But we're going to go into the beginning of the movie here for about maybe 25, 30 minutes, I think, is what's coming up next. Okay. And so if you just got here, you're just in time. As I say, all this is recorded, and this and much more is on the website. So all this information is out there. I'll be posting all the links and the videos, and we're going to be making a whole series of studio quality videos around this, Lord willing, and we're adding to it all the time. Just prepping for this. I think I added 20-30% new material in the last week to this night and the last one. It's just incredible how much stuff that you keep. Once you know what to look for, you find more and more. It's endless. So anyhow, don't feel bad if you came in late or if I'm talking too fast. It'll all be out there. So we're going to go now to the movie for about 25-30 minutes. Then we'll have a short break. Then we'll have another half-hour session of the movie, and then we'll take a slightly longer break for food, using the facilities, whatever you need to do. So that's the game plan. We're breaking the movie up into four sections, about a half hour each. Okay. So I'm going to play this now, and hopefully everything will work out well. So here comes, I got to rewind the movie too, because in case you came in late, there's a scene right before the movie starts, right after the very first intro, that is going through the 4 levels of existence. You'll see a lot of sound effects and matrix code that all goes into one little single dot. That dot then explodes, everything then descends, and then everything is made into a time clock. And that's the 4 worlds of existence that they put at the beginning. So I'm going to rewind the movie so we don't miss that part. All right, hold on one second. I'm going to pause it there, folks. Thank you. The last scene, as I mentioned earlier, was it's about as graphic as it gets, but it was very representative of where the people are at this stage, and they're not at the level of the main characters yet. They are united, as you saw in that big dance and everything. And Morpheus's speech, as I mentioned, was meeting them at the level that they were at. Of course, the union of the masculine and feminine, the divine love story, if you will, symbolic here with Neo and Trinity being together like that. Interesting thing I forgot to mention is when they get out of the elevator and there's all those people there, how Trinity tells Neo that they need him. And it's interesting because she represents the Shekinah, as I mentioned, that divine feminine presence. And the word Shekinah, which is commonly defined as the divine presence, actually is related to the word shakan, which is a neighbor. So she's got an association with the people of Zion, and also related to the word mishkan, which is like a word for the home or tabernacle. So she also has an association with the place of Zion. So Zion is both the place and the people, which is kind of interesting that we, that little scene there with Trinity coming out of the elevator. Couple things that just mentioned that we saw that I maybe didn't mention ahead of time. So Smith tells the guy at the door that Neo set him free. As we'll see in upcoming scenes that, yes, both Smith and Neo are now elevated out beyond that first level, that first just simply matrix level of the lowest world of Asiya. We call it the world of making, or the level of the soul level of Nefesh. They both moved on to the second level. And you'll see this consistent through the movies, that as one moves up, so does the other. They work in tandem, provoking one another, provoking each to change, which is ultimately, they don't see it, we don't see it right away, but ultimately that's what gets them and us toward the redemption. Is there has to be change, and change occurs in that type of a cycle that you see back and forth between the two. We saw, let's see here. Oh yeah, we saw this guy, Counselor Haman, who I'll explain more about him in a minute. But he showed up in the middle of that little dispute between Morpheus and Commander Locke. And we'll get to him in a bit. I mentioned last week too that Morpheus is really big on this Matrix prophecy. And this is one of the things that has thrown the whole Matrix fan world into disarray after this movie, especially. You'll see that Morpheus is sort of right about the prophecy. He just doesn't understand it in detail. Yet what's absolutely one of the most mind-blowing things, especially with the 4th movie coming out after 17 years or 18 years it was, I think, yeah, 18 years, is that the process of this prophecy unfolding toward the redemption, the way the Matrix did it with 3 movies in this long period of time, and then this 4th movie and what was in it, is identical to the Kabbalistic understanding of the process of redemption. It's the same thing. There's something that happens with one character, then there's this time that goes by and it's all confusing, and then the final stage. And we're going to look at that next week because there's just too much information for this week and I'm trying to spread it out. But the prophecy is intact to this day and exactly the way it should be going. The other thing too, we saw, the whole aspect of Neo fighting. I mentioned this last week too, of the concept of fighting in the movies. Whenever these interactions, whether it's training fighting or real fighting, is getting to know, to make a connection. Knowing means is da'at. It's an intimate connection with learning, like how to move ahead. So whenever you see these kind of fight scenes, and it's actually going to be explained I think in the next segment with a character named Seraph that Neo's going to meet, who actually explains it to him. So that's all stuff I want to mention. I think there was one other thing I wrote down. Oh yeah, I just had mentioned, if you missed it earlier, this is the second movie, second level of the soul called Ruach, second level of existence from the bottom up called Yetzirah. And in both cases, it is the world of confusion and mixed realities, all kinds of stuff. So we saw at the beginning here of the movie, there was dreams that are very confusing, as we all know dreams are. Neo says he doesn't know what he has to do next. There's multiple Smiths. We're going to meet new programs. There's going to be disinformation, as I said, especially about the prophecy and all kinds of challenges. So that's all in this movie. It's a mixed bag of craziness and the most complex of the four movies, I think. And but it's consistent with this aspect of Ruach. When we're on our own soul journey, we get that spark and we decide, there's more to life. I'm going to think about spiritual stuff. And then we go from one thing to another, and we have setbacks and learning and confusion. That's what it's about. It's you've got to work out all kinds of, really it's working out opposites. And if you think of the diagram we saw earlier where there's 6 aspects to the 6 aspects or 6 sephirot in this level of existence, it is kind of resolving all of those together and bringing them into some type of sensible path, so to speak. So anyhow, everything's very consistent. Any comments or questions? Oh, hi, Diana. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll be posting this without the movie sections because of the copyright issues. But eventually we'll get around that too. But the slides and discussion parts will be edited and put into a format to look at. If there's anyone has any comments they want to put into or questions into the text, I'll be looking as I just describe a little bit about the next section of the movie that we're going to be looking at here. As we saw these humans that in the cave and all that Morpheus and the others are trying to elevate to a higher level. It's interesting that the next scene we see is the antagonistic force of Smith is actually going to find a way to descend, well, I shouldn't say descend, move into the physical realm, as we'll see in the next scene. I don't want to give too much away, but just it's leading to the point of Smith wanting to take over everything, which is actually part of the plan of redemption, that everything gets connected one way or another, either good or bad, either way, the redemption comes. And so Smith, of course, we'll see in the movies, is quote unquote successful in whatever he thinks is going on. And only at the end of the next movie, next week, we'll see that he understands that he was used, so to speak, as part of the process. Oh, I think I missed a comment here. So when I refer to left or right, so generally speaking, yeah, it's referencing the diagram where the emanations on the right side are proactive without boundaries. Hey, we're going to talk about that right now, actually. That's coming right up here. And the emanations on the left side, be they just generally speaking or within us, either way, are more on the restrictive judgmental side. So you have a dynamic there that's also discussed in terms of masculine, feminine, proactive, reactive, force and form, et cetera, openness, restriction, so on. So that's the dynamic that we deal with in our existence. The fourth movie calls this as binary, one or the other. And we'll get to that in the fourth movie. But yes, to answer your question, generally speaking, it's the principles of proactive versus reactive, et cetera, along those lines. What we're going to see, let me go back to my wonderful slideshow here. Share screen, PowerPoint slideshow. Boom. Okay. This should move forward. Okay, so we're going to see Bane here, yeah. And later, this is a quote from the third movie, actually, with Bane, who is really Smith in Bane's body. There's nowhere I can't go. There's nowhere I won't find you, he says to Neo, which again plays along the same line that the other side, called the Citra Aqua, we might call it the evil side, but it's really heading toward the same purpose. That side is as present in every part of our existence as God is. God is. There's nowhere God isn't, right? We talked about that in the first movie where Neo first made contact with Trinity in this kind of, weird underground sexually oriented nightclub. It's like the weirdest part of the weirdest world of the Matrix, and yet that's where he makes his connection. So now, the number 6 comes up a lot, as we mentioned, with this second realm, because 6 Sephiroth and there's 6 aspects of Neo we're going to find out. The architect's going to tell us. And yeah, 6 is a very messianic number. Contrary to some traditions, it's actually a very messianic number. And Neo plays a messianic role. What's really interesting in this movie is there are 6 key conversations that come up in this movie, and we're going to start seeing them shortly. And he has one with the gentleman that you just saw a minute ago, the white-haired gentleman called Counselor Haman. And then he's going to have one with Seraph, who's a guardian to the Oracle. Now, that's the Oracle at this new level. Remember, you met the Oracle in the first movie in the kitchen, but now they're at a whole other level, and we'll get to that. He has a conversation with the Oracle that she tells him all about these program worlds, and then that's followed up immediately with the conversation with Agent Smith. Those two are back to back, and they are loaded with information, the Oracle and Agent Smith conversations. And then one with the Keymaker, and then one with the Architect. And these are all very significant conversations describing aspects of the Matrix reality. Some of it's distorted because we are in that mixed world of distortion, but some of it's also very true. And it parallels the same teachings in Kabbalistic literature regarding our reality, and particularly this mixed realm. So it's going to be very interesting. But as you can see, it centers around those 6 Sephiroth we talk about, but mostly the ones like from the middle up, like elevating Neo to where he needs to go, what he needs to learn. As we discussed, the Oracle and Architect he talks to are at the higher emanations of Bina and Hokmah, which are understanding and wisdom. Smith at Judgment, Gavura. Counselor Haman, we're going to meet here again and talk about him at Hesed, which is just openness, right? And then, as we said earlier, Seraph guards the way to Bina, the Oracle, and Keymaker guards the way to Hokmah, the Architect. And there's something that has to be done with both of those in order to progress beyond. Okay, so here's Counselor Haman. I don't like using good guys and bad guys because this movie is beyond those concepts, but okay, he's one of the good guys, right? And he represents, as I said, primarily that aspect of Hesed, which is just boundless giving. We often call it loving kindness, but at a more general level, it's unrestricted, proactive force of giving, if you will. And what's interesting is he has this conversation with Neo, and this is the first of the conversations. And it's an important one because he actually, you'll see, he and Neo get into a little intellectual discussion, and he asks Neo questions that are, somebody's coming in here. He's asked Neo questions that are very open-ended, what they're called. So the right side we're talking about, which is where he's operating from, Hesed, is open-ended. It doesn't have restriction. That's the left side. So Haman's going to ask him questions about how he says, I've slept 11 years of my life. I'm making up for it now. How about you? Like just completely open-ended. He mentions the machines that can keep them alive and others want to kill them. He says, isn't that amazing? Power to give life and power to end it. He throws these open-ended. There's another one. Oh yeah, he asked Neo, so what is control? So he throws these questions out there to make Neo start thinking, and that's so he's kind of like an agent to provoke things from the right side, to get things moving, which is interesting. That's his role at Hesed. So they're not yes or no questions. They're questions that his role is that. Then the next wonderful guy that we meet, fascinating person, is called Seraph, which is of course a word for like a fiery serpent. Seraphim or seraphs are the highest level or highest angels, according to, Kabbalistic literature. And as I mentioned, he's on the path of protecting what he says, protect what matters most, which is, I guess, the Oracle, because that's who he's protecting. And Neo has to fight with him, as we'll see, in order to get past him. But it's a friendly fight, it's a test. And it's an interesting scene because he tells Neo that you don't truly know someone. And that's the concept we talked about in Hebrew in the Torah literature. Knowing is da'at, and it's to be intimately knowledgeable, intimately connected with. It says you don't truly know someone till you fight them. And that goes back to Morpheus in the first movie with the training, where he tells Neo about you got to learn these things, and then they fight. It's like, so the fighting is always symbolic of something like that. And this concept of knowing comes up a lot in different conversations. It did in the sparring with Morpheus. It will later in this movie too with the Keymaker. So he uses the same kind of language. So we'll keep an ear out for that. Then once he gets past it really moves along, because once he gets past this conversation with Sarah, he comes to one of the two most important conversations, which is the park bench scene. And it's interesting because the Oracle says this weird thing. She goes on about how there's a program written for every little thing, even the birds walking on the ground. And this is taken right out of two sources, Midrash Rabbah and Zohar, which Midrash is a literature that's kind of homiletical in nature, taking concepts and putting them together. And the Zohar is just straight out the mystical concept, Kabbalistic concept. If you read these two, you'll see that and when you hear what she says, you'll see the connection of how she explains the role of programs, which are angels, as we mentioned, that this is where this comes from. This is what this connects to. So it's pretty interesting. And the whole conversation with the Oracle, and remember, she's Binah, which is understanding, which is breaking things down into pieces to really understand it. But she'll meet Neo when he comes in, and she says, look at you, you've turned out all right. And so it's like, okay, so he's now at a different level. She addresses the fact that he's having these dreams, which we mentioned, dreams are part of this second realm. She says, you didn't come here, meaning this new level, this second level. You didn't come here to make the choice, she tells him. You already made that choice at the first level. You're here to understand it. Remember, she is understanding, Binah. So she's basically saying, you're coming to me here, understanding, to move forward on your path. So there's a lot of little clues here in the dialogue. He asked her, like, why are you here? Like, why are you trying to help us? And this is interesting because she replies, well, we're all here to do what we're all here to do, meaning that there is some type of end goal to all of this. So, but the problem is she's a program, and aren't the programs bad and all that? That's why we have to get away from this good and bad thinking, that everything is actually working toward a single goal. Even the things that look like they're opposition forces, the quote unquote bad guys like Smith and Merovingian, are just the barriers we face in life that are there for a reason, to cause some type of change in us so that we can move forward and advance. Otherwise we stagnate. So if you think differently of the movie in terms of these elements and how they relate to Neo and others, the barriers are there, just like we talk about barriers in our life, right? You overcome something, you're stronger, et cetera. It's the same kind of idea was behind this movie. She even says to him, I'm interested in one thing, the future. Binah is future oriented. Chokhmah, wisdom, is past oriented when they're put together like that. And you'll hear the architect, who is Chokhmah, talks about the past and things that went wrong. So they kind of play that out perfectly. Let's see. Oh, and she says to him, the only way to get there, right, the future, is together, which is real interesting. So she's talking about her aspect and all the everything that's beneath her. So she's in charge of the program world. We'll find that out from the architect later, that she's actually running the programs according to her understanding that she has that he doesn't have. So she has a relationship with these programs, and also the Matrix world, of course, beneath that. So that's the hierarchy we talked about earlier: the Matrix world, the program world, and the Oracle world. So let's see what else. She also says to him about his dream. She tells him that he has the sight now, and he's looking at the world without time. And time is a dimension that is with our related just to our world, our physical reality. Is not the same dimension of time when you get into the spiritual realms. It's a whole different way. So that's another hint saying that you're past that first level and now that you're at the second level. And then let's see, she has that great line too about, I think that's in this scene. Yeah, she says, you can't see past the choices you don't understand, which is, again, such a critical thing, especially in this movie, that people, the whole Matrix movie is a great lesson in people thinking they get it, thinking that, oh yeah, now I understand, right? And finding out, no, you didn't, especially with the prophecy and other things you'll see coming up. It looks like they completely get frustrated at some point, especially Morpheus, because he was so confident, and then it's like, well, not quite how you thought it was, but hang in there, it will work out, just not quite the reason you thought. So, okay, so then we're going to, she tells him, oh yeah, you're going to meet some new programs. You're going to meet the Merovingian and the Keymaker. And you need the Keymaker, you need the Merovingian to get to the Keymaker that's going to get you to something else. So there's a whole process of advancement here for Neo coming up that she gives him a little bit of information on. Then, as you'll see, Smith shows up out of nowhere. Again, more concepts come up. He tells Neo, you destroyed me. But he also says, again, like she says, he says, what happened for a reason. He doesn't know what it is, but he knows there's a reason. So there is something at the end of this story that everything is pointing to, which is the prophecy, the redemption of the humans from this whole situation that they're in. So let's see. Oh yeah, and Smith mentions that when there's multiple Smiths, as you'll see, he mentions that we are here because of you. So that goes back to that cyclical thing I mentioned earlier, where Neo provokes Smith to advance, Smith then provokes Neo to advance, and you keep moving things forward that way. And then there's this really wild scene. Let me see. This was Smith here. Smith gives this little tirade, I don't know what you call it, on purpose, that higher purpose beyond. And he gives these points here: purpose that created us, purpose that connects us, pulls us, guides us, drives us, defines us, and binds us. And this is one of those really remarkable coincidences, if you want to call it that. But these 7 aspects of purpose can be plotted out exactly according to the emanations and what they are about. They're not in exactly the same order, but they're the same things, which is fascinating because Chesed, it starts with Chesed, and that's the aspect of proactive creation. And then, of course, you have Gevurah is on that left side of restriction and judgment and definition. That's what defines us. Tiferet is the central Sephirah that is called the Sephirah of truth and pulling, and it's the central to all of them. And, it's pulling you toward God. Netzach and Hod work together. One pushes or drives you, the other guides, together in conjunction. Yesod is called the Sephirah of connection, and then everything is bound together in Malkut. It's quite remarkable how these 7 aspects are how he defines purpose. I don't think that's by accident, but I don't know how much of it was actually planned either, but it works out quite perfectly well, as you can see. And I think that's it for pre-information before we get to the next fun part. Oh yeah, then we'll hit the information part where we have cake. Any comments before we start this next section of the movie? So the 2 big things here, well, 2 big things. You got 4 conversations coming up. The one with Counselor Heyman, who's from Chesed and is going to give Neo this provoking thought, open-ended questions. Then the one where Seraph explains to him about, the aspect of fighting and connecting that's truly to know something. And those are okay. But then the 2 deep ones are the conversation with the Oracle and everything that's detailed in that. And I'll type all that out and put it in the notes online because there's a lot in there. It's really, every sentence has something in it that's important, as well as the subsequent one with Smith that follows right on the heels of that. So hopefully this will cause more clarification than confusion, but that's the nature of this second movie and the second world that we're in. So if you are all ready, I'm going to play the next 30 minutes. Then we'll have a little bit longer break where people can get a piece of cake or whatever they got to do. Let the dog out. That's what I'm going to have to do. So I'm going to start the movie up here. Okay, boys and girls. So when's the third part? And as I said earlier, this last part's got some really the most insane stuff in it. Quite the scene there if you like the cartoon. I'll move right along here because I know we're running late. So we're going to meet the key maker here. Let me pull up my slide. PowerPoint slideshow. I forget where I am sometimes. All right. All right, there's that guy. Okay, so we're going to meet the key maker. And as I said earlier, so you saw that Seraph was the guardian or on the path to the oracle and at this level. And now the key maker is at the path to the entity called the architect at this level. So we're within the second movie, which is we're still within the second level of the soul. We're still within the world of Yetzirah, which is the angelic world. This is why we're meeting all these angelic programs or these things at this level, I should also say, because we meet them at different levels. And the keymaker, whereas Neo had to fight Seraph, kind of a fight to get in past, it's a little different with the keymaker in terms of what's going on. I mean, Neo has a struggle again too. Every level you see there's some fighting going on. He has to fight a bunch of guys this time, as do his sidekicks, Morpheus and company, which is an interesting concept of being challenged all the way. There's midrash about Moses when Moses was going up to elevating closer to God and to get the Torah and all of this, that there were angelic entities threatening like to kill Moses along the way. Like, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. You're human. So that's interesting parallel there in terms of there's always danger in advancement. It's a way it's set up. But if you are on the righteous path, you are assured that you will be protected and attain your goal. But when people try to attain these things for self-centered desires is when they meet bad results, because that's not how it works. So we're about to meet the key maker, and there's a couple of incredibly fascinating things regarding him. And one of the biggest mysteries of the Matrix, I'm going to explain to you if you don't know this one yet. So part of what he says when he meets with Neo and the others here, he says he's talking about doors and keys. And this is where it gets really mystical with regard to texts that they pulled from, primarily in the Zohar. There's a lot about in the spiritual worlds, there being these like doors and keys and what all that means. So he's talking about a very special door here that is they have to go through. And he says something interesting. He says that they only have a certain amount of time, and Neo's the one that has to do it, by the way. So Neo's in this position to do this, and within a certain amount of time. But he expresses this amount of time in a very peculiar way. He expresses it in terms of physical or spatial dimension, length and breadth of a window. So he doesn't say like, so many seconds plus so many seconds equals 314. He's talking about length and breadth. So when you have a concept like this where two things are put together, length and breadth, that's one direction and the other. When you have two concepts put together and you multiply them, it's called it's called a hebur, and we talked about this a bit last week with regard to the clock in Neo's apartment. There's a number of these in the movies. This one's particularly really interesting because the number 314 has been a lot of speculation around. Everybody and their brother jumped on pi, right? 3.1416, et cetera. But pi has no bearing on the movie at all. And plus, it's not just 314, it's 3.1416, and it continues, So, I mean, that's like one of those obvious things that's just obviously wrong, too, when you just look at it. There's no connection. So what is this? So we know that it's Neo that's making a connection, bringing two things together. And so this is still on this page. Let me see if I did that. Okay, so let's go back to one of our basic charts here, okay? And we know that Neo, coming out of the Matrix world down at the bottom there, where we see that the aspect of Trinity, the feminine or lower female aspect Trinity is at the Matrix level, which we discussed yesterday and a little bit today. And then above these six that we're dealing with throughout this movie is the oracle, who's called the mother or upper feminine or upper female. Okay, so Neo is the process of rectifying or going through these 6 dimensions or these 6 emanations. Is by doing that is connecting the lower matrix world feminine with the upper oracle world, which then connects to everything, above and beyond, the architect, the source, and all that. But it's these 6 in the middle that he has to prove himself and deal with to connect the 2 females. Now, Kabbalistically, the term female in Kabbalistic writings is called nukva, and it's generally associated with the lower one, but the 2 are both female, they're both connected. So they're the 2 females. So you have nukva number 1 and nukva number 2 there with Trinity and the oracle. Now, as we said, the length and breadth of the window is 2 numbers multiplied. So if you go to a website and you say, well, what are the different factors? Those are 2 numbers that can be multiplied. What are the 2 factors of 314? There's only one set of factors, other than 1 and 314, of course, but otherwise, there's only one set of factors, and that's 2 and 157. Okay, number 2 times 157 gives you 314. That would be the hibur of those 2 numbers. Well, we have 2 in that the Trinity is 1 and oracle is the other. And the Hebrew word for nukva, for female, is spelled nun kuf bet he. When you add up the numbers, the numerical value of the numbers, it is 157. So when Neo connects the upper 157 with the lower 157, it equals 314, which is the number of seconds that is needed to bring all, everything for him. He's the only one that can do this, because he's the aspect of, the one being able to put all this together. But further, the connecting aspect between all of these realms is also associated in Kabbalistic writings with an angelic figure, the head of the angels, called Metatron. And the numerical value of Metatron is, you guessed it, 314 as well. So Neo is, and we are in the angelic world, in this movie, with the programs and all. So there's this fascinating connection with around the number 314. It's straight out of these Kabbalistic texts. That is the answer to the question why he's answering this in terms of a multiplication, a width and a width and a length multiplied to give you this 314. So anyhow, that's a neat little tidbit for you regarding the 314. Then it gets even weirder. Okay. Let's see, what was I going to say about before I leave the key maker here? Well, like I said, he does talk about doors and keys, which I said is some of the most insane stuff. And he talks this text above here. I'm going to move something out of the way, where he talks about this mysterious building, a level where no elevator can go to, no stair can reach. It's filled with doors. The doors go to hidden places. One door is special, and it leads to the source. I mean, this is the kind of language that you do see in the Zohar regarding doors and keys in the angelic realm. And I wasn't going to post this because it's kind of long, and I'm not going to get into it, but I'll just show you. So I'll give you like a minute to read through it. This is a text where they drew this from. Okay, it's in the Zohar, and it is really crazy and hard to understand. But you'll be able to pick up certain elements in it. I guess I could read it aloud. So it says, "What is the meaning of Bereshit?" Right, which is the Genesis, the first book of the Bible. The term for "in the beginning" from Genesis 1:1 means with wisdom. The wisdom on which the world is based, and through this, it introduces us to deep and recondite mysteries. The holy and mysterious one, graved in a hidden recess, one point. So there's your reference right up to the key maker. In that he enclosed the whole of creation as one who locks up all his treasures in a palace under one key, which is therefore as valuable as all that is stored up in that palace, for it is the key which shuts and opens. In that palace, there are hidden treasures, one greater than the other. The palace is provided with 50 mystic gates. Like I said, this is beyond explanation, but I'm just reading it. They are inserted in its 4 sides to the number 49. The one remaining gate is on none of its sides, and it is unknown whether it is on high or below. That's the reference again to the key maker. It is hence called a mysterious gate. All these gates have one lock, and there is one tiny spot for the insertion of the key, which is only marked by the impress of the key. It is thus this mystery that is implied in the words "in the beginning created God." So this is what created God. There's a whole video about that by Daniel Matt, that the concept of God that we understand is actually a creation of the real hidden, eternal, transcendent God, which is what the architect is. Okay, so this is where we're going to get to the architect. He's God, but he's only God at a certain level. Anyway, I just posted this. It's not meant to really get into right now because it's too much, but just to show you how crazy some of these texts get with these concepts. And this is where they drew this whole key and door and hidden in the building from, is out of this. I went through the whole Zohar looking to see what there was, and this is the best example of the kind of stuff that requires a lot of work, to decipher. Then we're going to see here, there's only a couple slides and then we'll get back to the movie. We're going to see this speech that Morpheus gives right after the keymaker scene. And this is interesting because, and Morpheus, of course, is big on faith, which is faith. Chokhmah is faith is at the level of, trust or hope is at the level of Bina, and faith is at the level of Chokhmah, because faith is singular. It's kind of like a yes or no, whereas trust is all and hope is all, the things you have to work out. Right? Which is, Bina is called the 50 gates of Bina, 50 gates of understanding, because it's how we work out our faith, is through all of the things we have to do. But faith is still basically number one. I'm the Lord your God. Okay, yes, all right, good. There we go. So he's coming at it from that fourth level, but then he says, which is divine providence, by the way. So he says, we've not come here by chance. I don't believe in chance when I see, and here we go, 3 objectives, 3 captains, 3 ships. Okay, so what you have here are the 3 lower dimensions, the 3 lower worlds. The captains are the people of this world. The ships are what take you to and fro between, the angelic world, the ladder, and then the objectives is the conceptual. The objectives is the 3rd level up, the level of the oracle, actually, which we're going to get into next week more. So Morpheus is kind of outlining his little speech here around transversing these realms to achieve their objective. So anyway, that's just another one of these things that's just kind of embedded in his speech. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here a little bit. Then we come to this guy, the architect, who's now we're talking about the 4th level on the journey, right? There's the matrix level, there's the program level, there's the oracle level, then finally the architect level. And this is always present in every movie, but we are dealing right now mostly with the world of Yetzirah, as I said, the 2nd world, the 2nd level, the program level. So we're getting, that's why we're meeting him here, because he's a highest level program. He is the father of the matrix, as he calls himself. He is the creator, as he calls himself, but he himself is a program and created. So he's not the ultimate aspect of creator. He is what we can understand and deal with. So when we talk about God, or read our Bibles or pray or anything, we're talking about God at this level. We're talking about the architect. No, we're talking about God at a level we can understand and deal with within existence. We can't comprehend what's outside of existence. Our brains aren't capable because by definition, it's outside of all that. So that's what's interesting with this matrix here. When you meet the architect, he is the father, he is the God of the matrix, if you will, but he's not the highest level thing there is, because that's the source that we don't really know what that is. It's out there somewhere in the storyline. So the architect himself really puts out a lot of concepts as well that are really weird. And I mentioned earlier when I talked about the 314, this angelic figure of Metatron. Well, he comes back again here in this speech, which makes it doubly weird. And this is text again from Zohar. And it's talking about, again, there's a lot of context around it, but I'll just read it. When the soul is doomed to undergo transmigration, which means coming back around again, which is called Revolutions, by the way, which is the name of the next movie, by the way. So should it be one which emanated from the side of the servant Metatron, here we go, who represents in himself 6 aspects, as we've been talking about all night, the 6 aspects, right, that are in between, above and below. Then the successive revolutions of that soul will not be more than 6 times. So there's a time element here, which is the 6 times Neo comes around, right? Until it shall have completed the 6 stages which lead back to the region from whence it came, the source, which he mentions in his speech here. So you get a lot of weird stuff here, but the key aspects are that there's 6 aspects to the one. There's 6 times around with the one. The one unites above and below, the two feminine aspects, which is the aspect of Metatron, the 314, and the whole purpose of everything is to lead back to the source, the region where it came from. So again, this is where they pull this stuff from. It's right out of Zohar. Now, whether they studied it exactly and wrote it around this, I don't know. Some of this stuff, I believe, just takes on a life of its own. But this is where these ideas are connected to. I know this is kind of hard to understand outside of context, so this is the kind of stuff we need to talk about in the group more and develop and provide resources and links and articles and all this to really, this isn't like 30-second soundbite stuff that you can learn. This is just the overview through these presentations to show the connections. And hopefully we can have some pretty good discussions in the months ahead to really develop this stuff, because it's very important in terms of understanding our reality, which is the whole point of what I'm doing with the Matrix, is to just find these concepts that are throughout all of these different texts and things, and show how they're in the movie and how they connect with the storyline, and then expound on them to understand them in our own world, in our own lives, and where we're at today. So there's a method to the madness, or madness to the method. So the architect talks about Neo's altered consciousness, which, as I said earlier, when you hear consciousness, it's the soul. So altered consciousness is a higher level or different level of the soul. That's synonymous language. And he talks about Neo being the result of an anomaly, which is real interesting. He does mention, by the way, Neo is the sixth version. He makes it very clear Neo's the sixth one, and the last one by himself, as we find out in the fourth movie, but I won't give too much away. But he's the result of an anomaly. It's a weird discussion, this whole concept of this anomaly, because the whole concept of an anomaly has to do with like equations and all. And as he expresses it, he's always trying to balance the equation to get it back to that singularity, but he can't, and he can't understand why. Only the Oracle does, and that's why the Oracle ends up being the one that redesigns everything in the programs and works with the humans and all of that, because it's outside the capacity of the architect's singular thinking. He's not meant to do that, because he can't see like his own origin, really, that he's a product of the first, what we call last week, Tzimtzum, the first constriction. There was this, idea of a perfect singularity and perfection, and then came another consciousness, something else that God, that perfect unified God we can't describe, decided, if you use that language, to create something other than God and lesser than God. So that whole concept of lesser than the perfection creates this anomaly. And as he says, this anomaly goes through everything, he says, and it does. It goes through all of these levels of existence, goes through all of our world. And so it's just interesting language that he uses with regard to what Neo is. And yeah, so he explains too how the Oracle is the mother of the Matrix. Binah is called mother, and the two of them work together. They're, in a sense, inseparable. You don't see them a lot together in the movies. Just at the end of the third one, you'll see them in an interesting scene. But Binah and Chokhmah are always considered to be mother and father that are together, not separated, whereas the bride and groom aspect are separated and need to work to come back together to bring everything as one. So I guess, yeah, she is able to get into the psyche, the mind of all human beings and work with them. That's why she's in that position. And has that ability to connect back to the architect and where everything came from, but also the ability to, go the other direction and connect to all human beings. And everyone that is freed meets with the Oracle. That's one thing we do learn. Just like we had a lot of conversations with Neo in this movie. In the third movie, which is the third level, which is the Oracle's level, if you major level, you'll find that Neo, Morpheus and Trinity, Smith, Niobe, Ramachandra, and the architect all have conversations with the Oracle. There's 6 conversations in that movie as well with the Oracle, though, because it's at her level. So that's going to be fun next week. Okay, so I think that's a lot of heavy stuff here at the end, which is too late in the evening to try to develop. Oh, there's my slide again, just to remind everybody, yeah, where we were on the chart here. I should have pulled this up. So So yeah, we're getting up to this level of the architect within the second movie, within the world of Yetzirah. And here too, Neo, you'll see that he's seen the Oracle earlier, and now he's going to this fourth level, where the fourth level is always about connecting to other people and beyond himself. And there's a lot of discussion you'll see with the architect in the whole aspect of the one and others and humanity and other people. So that's important. And then Neo afterwards takes that and takes it all the way to that fifth level of self-denial, where he is willing to put his life on the line. And you see that he does that at the end of the movie, almost the very end, where he sorry, that came up there. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot how my slides are in tonight. I put these together so late. And then one of the things that does come up is that when Neo returns from the architect, he has a conversation with the others, and he basically relays what the architect told them, which is like they were all wrong about the prophecy, which, as I said, we're in this dimension of, mixed information and confusion, and the architect can't even see everything. He doesn't know more than he knows. And as the Oracle explains in the next movie, not even he can see past the choices he doesn't understand. But it looks like the prophecy is a lie. And most of the Matrix fan base out there just assumes, oh yeah, the prophecy was a lie. And they just, And it's like, no. They're not understanding what's going on in the movie. And by the way, it's pretty obvious that this guy had bad information. So why would you believe it? But there is this stage where Morpheus, who's very gung-ho about the prophecy, looks a little depressed, as you can see here. This is cut from that scene. And because it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. But that's something we have to understand in our own lives, is sometimes it doesn't make sense. And with regard to the prophecy, and I'll show you next week and show where it comes out of, as a book called Secrets of the Redemption, especially that outlines that the prophecy actually has a first stage and then a long gap and then a second final stage. And that's what we see with not only with the storyline, but the actual movies had a gap after the third movie. And then only last year did we see the fourth movie. So that's really interesting too, how that followed. So don't worry, kids, the prophecy's still intact, even though it's going to look pretty bad, and everyone but Morpheus is pretty much going to think it's done for. And then, yeah, this last weird scene, by the way, and I just want to bring this up. This is a little odd, but there is this scene at the very end. And let me take you back in time. In the first movie, Neo boarded the Nebuchadnezzar, which is the ship. It's Morpheus's baby, and everyone's attached to it. It's a very meaningful ship. And there was a lot of talk on the internet. At the top of the plaque says Mark 3:11. And yeah, that sounds like a verse in the New Testament. So where people were looking it up, saying, oh, maybe that's like a clue, right? And this is the verse on the right. And it's talking about these unclean spirits saw him, fell down before him. Okay, and that's the main part. And it's just kind of weird because this was the plaque on the Nebuchadnezzar, and this movie ends with the Nebuchadnezzar being blown up, right? And then Neo runs, they're running away, and Neo turns around, puts his hand up, and these things fall before him. It's just weird how that plays out, And who knows, maybe the Wachowskis, they pull from Hinduism, they pull from the New Testament in a couple places, they pull from a lot of places to put this story together. But it's just interesting how this, a lot of people caught the Bible reference, but they didn't catch the relationship to this scene here that we're going to see at the end of the movie. And that, I think, is my last slide before we watch this last part of the movie. And yeah, interesting coincidence. Oh yeah, I love this. Let me go back. I got to do this one again. This was cool. I did this by accident, but look how this segues into this. Isn't that neat? And next week, we're going to meet little Sati, and little Sati will continue. We'll meet her in the third movie. And then we have 18 years before the fourth movie, and little Sati comes back, much to everyone's surprise, except for, well, I was writing articles about Sati coming back. They're all on the Matrix site for the last few years, because that's part of the whole Kabbalistic structure, is that she has to return. So let's watch this last section of the movie. Thank you for sticking with me, and I will stick around afterwards as long as anyone wants to talk about whatever. So I'm going to go back and put our wonderful film on. Share screen. 1 second here. Where are we? Where's my movie? There it is. Unmute. Okay, so we're going to take a pause here and have a little brief intermission so people or whatever else they got going on, and we'll resume in just a few minutes. But go ahead and do that. And if anyone wants to ask a question on the microphone, now's a good time, and or just type it in the box if you prefer. But we're midway here, and as I said, there was a lot in those two conversations with the Oracle and Smith. I've got some of that information already on the website. I'm going to be breaking everything down a little differently and adding a new part to the website. It's kind of going to be all the slides going through the movies in a timeline like this. I think that's going to be the next phase of the Matrix4Humans project. But we're going to meet two new characters coming up soon. When we come back from intermission, we'll meet this Merovingian character, and we'll discuss ahead of time what he represents. And like I said, this is the most complex of the movies with all these different characters and ideas coming at us at once. Yet the movie I had the hardest time with was the third movie, next week's Revolutions. That one I just could not, I just didn't feel like I liked it as much till I started doing more homework and ran into a few really interesting books and things that kind of opened that one up, and then it's like, okay, that totally makes sense. You know how that is, right? So well, Zion in the movie is where the people, an aspect of the people are. I mean, they're living, most of the people are in the Matrix world still, most of humanity. Those who have escaped that are in the Zion world. Although some are born in the Zion world and were never in that Matrix. You know, it's all part of the movie. You do got to make a movie out of this, you know. But it is kind of a futuristic thing too, in terms of that, you know, Zion's not Zion yet. Zion, as the character in the last movie said, is where the party will be when the captives return. All of that literature you see in the Bible and other related places, when the redemption comes, you know, everything comes together. So Zion has a futuristic part to it, just like the Oracle said to Neo a few minutes ago on the park bench. She said, I'm interested in one thing, the future, and the only way we get there is together, the people. So you see this unity coming between the Oracle and Neo and the people and everything. By the way, did you notice that the Oracle immediately got out of the park bench scene right before Smith showed up? She obviously knew Smith was about to show up because, as I said, she's in charge of the situations and the programs. And she knew that Smith was coming and would have this encounter with Neo, which looks like a terrible, bad thing for a little while for us, but it's all part of what is necessary and required to move everything forward. Sometimes it is not in an obvious way. Sometimes it's counterintuitive, but till you see the big picture, like next week, a lot of these things are explained in the third movie when it all comes together and you see the first aspect of the redemption happen. And then it's like, well, it can't be the end of the story because obviously it isn't. There's still a Matrix at the end of next week's movie, and the prophecy's not fulfilled. So it's like, did they just leave it off like that? And no, actually, remarkably, there should be a gap, as I said earlier, in the fourth movie and then a fifth conclusion, and everything's kind of on schedule. So anyhow, that was two really good conversations. The next section, when we come back, and you can go get your drinks or whatever, I'm just rambling here. But the next section, when we come back, is got the Merovingian we're going to meet, and his, what's the word? Consort? Wife. Actually, it's his wife. That's right. He calls her his wife, Persephone. And, he has an interesting relationship with Neo, just like Smith does. He also has an interesting relationship with Smith, even though they don't meet in this movie or the next one. They do in the fourth briefly. There are two aspects of the other side of the Sitra Achra. And we talk about what the opposition forces are to us in our own lives, as well as in the movie. And they fall in two categories. They follow the things that are dangerous and judgmental and can can really hurt us, which is like the Smith category of that overt fear, that keeps us in fear. And then the opposite of that is that which distracts us. We go back to the woman in red part in the first movie that distracted Neo. Anything that is temptation, lust, and things like that, that gets us off the track in a different direction. And that's what Merovingian represents. So Smith and Merovingian are the two aspects of the other side that throw us off our path. One is fear and one is desire. And that comes up indirectly multiple times in the first three movies, and then is explicitly explained to us in the fourth movie by the analyst, which is the new architect figure. He talks about fear and desire being the two things that keep humans under control, which is fascinating that they fully explain it in the fourth movie. But that's the Merovingian. He's going to be the side of, what do you call that? Hedonism? Yeah, hedonism, right? Hey, drink and eat and women around, all this stuff. He's one of these playboy type, you'll see what he has to, and that's how he traps humans. Whereas, like I said, Smith operates from the aspect of fear. So that's coming up after this. And Persephone is his counterpart, just like Trinity is the counterpart to Neo. The other side has a matching counterpart, if you will. But it's interesting though, is Persephone has it's interesting. She has a part of her that remembers from the past, like kind of what she could have had. And you'll see that play out in terms of what she desires and wants and actually helps them, which is another whole other thing. And that's the two characters you're going to meet in the next scene. And then there's two parts to the next scene that are not really so much about character development or anything, but they're fun to watch. And one is the car chase scene on the highway with the motorcycle, which is wild. I mean, it's actually, if you like cool movie chases, it's really well done. And then there's a fight scene in the next section too, which is done with Neo fighting 6 other guys who are all using medieval weapons like spears and maces and pitchforks. I mean, it's, what am I trying to say? But anyhow, it's a really great fight scene, very unique. So there's two cool cinematographic, is that the word? Scenes coming up, which take up a good chunk of the next section, plus the Merovingian and Persephone. So that's what's coming up after this break here. And then the fourth section is really crazy because that's when we meet the keymaker and architect, and those are two of the deepest parts to the movie because they're an even higher level, and that will be hard to explain in just one evening here. So we'll probably have to discuss that more in the Facebook group because there's a lot to it, but we'll cover some of it tonight. So anyhow, yeah, well, I think we got the kid with the spoon there again. Yeah, you saw that guy, the kid character named Kid, how he's all gung ho and doesn't have, he has problems with personal space and boundaries, but he's got a good heart and he believes, right? He's a young man of faith, but needs to learn boundaries. That's his thing we mentioned. So that's an out of control Netzach. And Commander Locke was the opposite. He's the locked in aspect of Hod, which just evolving around himself, and very narcissistic, right? And he continues to be that way in the third movie. He doesn't get a lot of rectification, at least not that we see. So we'll go one more minute here just to give people time to settle down, and then we'll restart. For the third section, there's 4 in all, of course. This next one also runs about a half hour. They're pretty even tonight. But yeah, we're going to see the Merovingian, and as I said, he and everyone has a connection to Neo somehow in these movies. They're all things Neo relates to, and we'll hear actually from Persephone that Merovingian, she says, was once like Neo, very much like him. So in the past, and there'll be another reference here to past Neos and predecessors, as they're called. He calls himself the trafficker of information, which, if you remember on the Sephiroth on the diagram, you can put Merovingian in a couple of places equally. You could put him at Yesod, or you can put him at Hod, where I had him, the bottom left or the bottom middle. because everything get traffics through Yesod or up through Yesod, but Hod is the decision-making process. And as we'll hear in the third movie, not this week, but third movie, it is explained to us that the Merovingian has power over what goes in and out of the matrix. He is the decision-making process, which is centered around Hod, that aspect of Hod, the bottom left, which is analyzing things and then making decisions. Other than that, let's see. Oh yeah, so they're at the table. He has a big thing about causality, that cause and effect. He sees everything like everyone else on the left, because the left is the side of restriction. Sometimes it can work against you. So he's very restricted in his viewpoint in terms of how he just simply views everything as cause and effect, causality, and has no belief in the aspect of free will or choice, or that there's something beyond his realm, beyond his worlds. And we'll see how that we'll see how well that goes for him. But it's just interesting that goes part and par with the whole aspect of hedonism and just meeting your desires, and there's nothing beyond that. Another interesting part you'll see when they leave the Merovingian scene, they come out of an elevator and there's a brief discussion about, gee, what went wrong, with their meeting, because it doesn't go as planned. And Morpheus says to Neo, what happened and could not have happened any other way, which is, Morpheus being the man of faith, right? Believing that there's prophecy and it's all going to work out, is speaking from the position that there's really only one ultimate end to the story, one ultimate power behind everything when he says that. That's the concept called Ein Od Milvado, which is there's no other power. It does, even though it doesn't look like it, things cannot go any other way other than the way they're eventually supposed to go. We have some say in little things in between now and then, but at the end of the day, the plan will end as said. That kind of goes to the spoon thing too, where the kid runs up and gives Neo the spoon, says, oh, I got it from the orphan, he made me promise to give it to you. We talked about the spoon last week, how there's two levels of understanding. One is simply that, you have to learn to bend to circumstances, and that's all true. And we quoted Viktor Frankl and all that. And that's in last week's if you want to play the video. But there's a deeper aspect of the spoon, which goes to this aspect that, there is no spoon, meaning that there is but one singular, plan, one singular origin to everything, one singularity we're returning to, and that any of these things that we think are the way we think of them is not necessarily accurate. It's all one. And Neo realizes this in the next movie, as the Smith Too Late, that even Smith is not his enemy. It sure looks like it. Everyone would say so. But Neo realizes at the end that Smith is just part of what it took to get to where they need to go. And that's revealed in the third movie. So I'm sorry, let me see what I missed. I'm rambling here and I missed a comment or two. Oh, interesting that Locke is the only character with a real name. Jason. Everyone else has an alias. Cypher is actually called Mr. Reagan in the script. I don't know if it's actually in the movie, but he's Mr. Reagan, like the former president. Kind of funny. Yeah, you're probably right on that. I didn't think of it. Neo is Thomas Anderson, of course. Well, that's that name. I don't know which name's the real name, right? Is Neo the fake name or is Neo the real name, right? All right, I think we'll get going here. Like I said, it's basically about the Merovingian. Oh, yeah, another one of these little subtle connections is the number of Neo's apartment is 101, and the number of the Merovingian's restaurant is also 101. I don't. You can read into that, a lot of ways, but basically it's just kind of hinting that there's a connection between these two guys, as well as there was a connection between Smith and Neo, which is explained to us in the third movie next week. The Oracle explains exactly what Smith's connection to Neo is, but you're gonna have to wait a week for that. And yes, somebody mentioned Ramachandra, who's this Indian gentleman who briefly shows up in the corner being escorted out of the restaurant, and we don't know why. It was a big mystery when the movie came out. It was like, wait a minute, who's that guy? Because they clearly show him being led out. So there's something coming, and that's only explained next week in terms of he went to the Merovingian for something, and we'll get to that next week because we got too much going on here. But yes, Ramachandra has a 2-second appearance here. And he's a very significant character in the third movie. And even in the fourth movie where he doesn't appear, his daughter does and explains his significance. So, all right. So we are going to resume the movie. That's the plan. Hold on a second. Let me see if it was kind of forgot to check the old slides here to see if I was talking about that. And I think I already hit these things now. Oh yeah, that's my, okay, the Merovingian, Persephone. Okay, yeah, that was it. There was only 2 slides, Merovingian and Persephone. And yeah, he's the trafficker of information, which is a combination of Hod and Yesod. That's what he calls himself. And Persephone, I nicknamed her the other side of Trinity because she is the cohort or consort to the Merovingian, and he was once like Neo, so she is once like Trinity. In fact, this last week and how significant the kiss was in terms of the female and the male, and she wants to experience this, and you can again read into that different ways, but the point is she ends up, there's a rectification there because she ends up helping them, which is interesting. So Neo's bringing everything together, right? All right, so I'm going to go to the movie here. And that was very painful in 2003 to be sitting in a theater and see that come up on the screen, because we had no idea, you know. That was in the fall of 03, and the second part came, no, in the spring, and the second part came out in the fall of 03, about 5-6 months apart. Basically, almost like one movie cut in 2 with different dimensions, because if you notice on that chart, on that path we're on, once you get out of our world, right, the Matrix world, our world, into the spiritual worlds, there's a lower and upper part to the spiritual dimensions. The lower part is the angelic realm, the ladder in Jacob's dream in Genesis. And the upper part is the powers that, more conceptual powers and forces that oversee everything in the engine. That's the oracle world. And that's the focus of the third movie. So it's interesting how the movies are carved up exactly like that, that there's a lower and upper spiritual dimension of Yetzirah and Beria, they're called. So anywho, that starts, thank you for bearing with me. I'm very tired, if you can't tell. And B, the last part of the notes and movie I didn't get to really finish, and it's the most complicated parts that I didn't do it justice with regard to the keymaker and architect, but that's okay. We'll work on that and get more material out on the website and stuff, and in the group. I'd love to get some discussion going in the group about some of these concepts and things. The recording of last week's notes slides is already in the group. We'll probably get this one up in midweek. I have a friend that helps me with that, so we'll edit this one and put that on YouTube sometime in the middle of the week. And like I said, this stuff, it seems like, oh, it's all kinds of concepts and weird things, but it actually is an outline of existence and an outline of the plan of redemption that, according to the Torah, according to Kabbalah, and it's real interesting with regard to, you know, everything for the 3 movies is really cool, but then the 4th movie just completely blows it out of the water. As weird as that 4th movie is, I've noticed that the less popular the movies get, the deeper the concepts get. So this movie had a ton of things in it, as I said, and it was a lot. Next week is the 3rd movie, which was the one that bothered me for a long time. I just wasn't getting it as well. And then all of a sudden, like, things fell into place, and it's like, wow, this has got some really, really high level stuff in it next week with Ramachandra and Sati and the rest of the Merovingian story, and how Neo comes to understand what Smith really is. And that's a lesson for us too. And also, all good stuff. We'll be doing it again next Saturday with Revolutions. It's interesting, the titles of the movie. Of course, you have The Matrix, but then you have Reloaded, and then Revolutions, which is both concepts regarding like a soul, you know, being reloaded in for the next version, and Revolutions meaning again. And then Resurrections is the 4th movie. So it's interesting sequence there too. So there's all these little niches in these movies that are pretty wild. I think that was the last slide too. I had one other slide. 1 minute. Hold on, what was it? Stop share and put it up here. PowerPoint. Oh yeah, so Sati. I just want to look at that transition one more time. This is just so much fun from the other slides. Like, here we go. Isn't that cool? All right. Oh, there we go. Sati shows up next week, and she is another aspect of the feminine, obviously. She's an aspect of the Shekhinah. She's what's called the daughter aspect, and she is called the daughter. She's the only character that is called the daughter in these movies. And that is an important part when it comes to the fourth movie. The daughter aspect is the aspect that connects more with the people among them. That's in the fourth movie. But she'll show up in the third movie next week, and it makes no sense. Her part, that whole episode, doesn't really make any sense in terms of the movie. Just from the movie level of things, like it didn't contribute anything to the story. It's kind of a side track until you realize what that's all about, and the train station and the Merovingian and what he's all about, which is some fun stuff we'll get into next week. I'm just having a sip here. If anybody wants to talk about any of this stuff, we can, or hang out as usual. Yeah, so we saw there at the end where Neo gets to that level of the fourth level, architect, and the whole discussion around his relationship with other humans. So it always follows that pattern. Every movie, like I said, he's asleep and wakes up. He's curious. He goes through some realm of struggle, confusion, dreams in this case, and all. He meets with the Oracle, gets some new direction. Then he figures out some aspect of his greater collective consciousness with other human beings. And then he ends up putting his life on the line and merits going to the next level of the soul. That pattern of 5 things occurs in every movie, which is kind of at the heart of everything in terms of our own lives. Shekhinah means divine presence. It's the aspect of spirituality, of the aspect. God is just God, but from our perspective, it's, everything's different. So it's the aspect of godliness or godly presence in our physical world, in our world. And it plays out persona-wise, it plays out in terms of the bride aspect to connect to the groom and bring everything together, but there's also a daughter aspect that energizes the people. We talked earlier, like with the cave scene at the beginning of the movie, the cave scene where the people were all energized, but at a very low level, but Morpheus was meeting them at that level. And so everyone has to, it's called the arousal from below. And the concept is that there's no arousal from above to bring the final redemption until there's an arousal from below. So Pete, we have to be cognizant of what we're to do, and enough people, that is, and stimulate that by doing the right actions and acting selflessly, not selfishly, which is what got the humans in the Matrix in the first place. And by creating this arousal from below, the heavens respond, and the whole redemption process comes to its conclusion someday. So, Shoshana, yeah, like that's like a rose. It's from Zohar, the very beginning of Zohar, which is the mystical text in Judaism. The very beginning of it, the first words are the first sections are commentary on the Torah, on Genesis and Exodus and so on. And so the very first verse of the Zohar, commenting on Genesis 1:1, goes right into Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim, which is the foundational text for the Matrix movies, by the way. We'll be doing Shir HaShirim study, resuming that early next year, January, Lord willing. And anyhow, so yeah, like a rose, there's a whole mystery of the rose, if you will, which is the people of God, community of Israel, people of God on earth. And Yeah, so there's a lot of things on the parallel level. So the rose, right? Shoshan, the rose. Malkut, the lowest emanation. Um, the Shekinah, like I said, the Nefesh level of the soul. The concept of the lower female, Nukva, we talked about. All these things are on a parallel level, on the low level. They're all different aspects of this world and spirituality in this world. So there's multiple things at every level that connect. So the next second level is the bridegroom, the 6 Sephiroth, the area of our struggle that we have to go into and work things out. That's the Ruach level of the soul. The angelic world, Jacob's ladder, that's all at the second level. You get to the third level, you're at the highest level of the soul, the highest level of creation. That's where the oracle is. That's where we attain our highest level of personal connection or consciousness. That's your like born again level, if you will, you know, and all of that. And those are the 3 levels that we basically, here's a cool thing, ready for this? So there's 5 levels of the soul, 5 major levels, you know, we deal with all 5 within each one as we've been looking at. So the first movie was about the Nefesh level, second movie is about the Ruach level, and the third movie will be about the Neshama level. And those are the 3 levels of the soul that if you're fortunate enough and work hard enough that you connect to and fulfill and repair in this life. The upper 2 levels of the soul are said to be only levels that we connect with, not after we die. That's too much to get into, but that's when we make those connections. So what's interesting is you get to the 3rd level of the soul next week, right? Neo, he's only up to the 3rd level. So how's he going to get to the 4th? He would have to die. Well, he dies and resurrects in the next movie, and you're at the 4th level of the soul. So that's a pretty amazing thing how they pull that idea off. Like, yeah, Neo would have to die, right? Yeah, no problem. We'll just bump him up and bring him back at the 4th level, which is the level of communal or consciousness, you know, collective consciousness. And you see these aspects of that and the level of everything coming together into an echad unity of things coming together as one. So the whole 4th movie is about things coming together, the machine world, the human world come together. Even the names of certain characters, the name of the ship, are all aspects of things coming together, being reunified. Lost my train of thought. So that's at that 4th level of things, which is the level of the architect. He's in every movie, like I said, but his level is the 4th level, of course, going up. He's at the 4th level, and the 4th movie is centered around the character of the architect, which is called the analyst in that movie. Same character, same idea. So some really amazing, just every time you think, well, gee, will the next movie follow the pattern? Will it follow the timeline? Will it follow, you know, and it does, everyone has. That's what's so extraordinary to think about this. It's not just a bunch of random ideas. It's these things are what should be there, how they should interconnect, and the sequence of things all heading toward a goal. And so far, like all 4 movies have hit the nail on the head. You know, it's just really weird. It's very hard to explain. And I'm not the only crazy person that thinks this. There's a Rabbi Gideon Holland is his name. You can look him up. Holland, like the country. Just type in Rabbi Holland Matrix Kabbalah, and he's got a 10-part video series, which is lovely, mostly centered around the first movie. And it's in Hebrew with English captions. But it's amazing. A lot of material he presents, I put into my presentations too. And he's not the only one, but he's got a 10-part video series on this. It's pretty amazing. In what ways is the Matrix world different from a holographic simulation? Well, a holographic simulation, I mean, I guess we'd have to determine what we mean by holographic simulation first. I mean, it's real. Even the Matrix world says it's real, you know, in the sense that you die in the Matrix, you die in the real world. Our world's real. This is not some just grand illusion. This world is real with consequences. We are here for a purpose in this world to correct things within ourselves and within our world. Same in the Matrix. They're in the Matrix, not as a punishment, not as slavery. That's the superficial view. They're in the Matrix to learn to do, not to do what got them in there, to act. They got in there in the storyline by acting selfishly. And they turned the robots into slaves, and they were living like pigs. They became terrible human beings and ended up in the Matrix. So they're there to get away from that, to correct that, make these corrections, and then bring about the redemption in that way. So, I mean, there's much more to it than just a simulation. There's a real source behind it in the movie, a real God behind it in our lives. There's real purpose and reasons. Everything is real, even though it's a world of concealment. I mean, we can't see the spiritual worlds, but they're real. But our world is still real. It's not. It doesn't make our. And there's some concepts out there that, oh, everything's just an illusion. It's like, no, it isn't. At one level, you can say it's illusionary because the real reality includes more. It doesn't disclude. Is that the word? Not include us. We are part of the real reality. It's just there's much more to it than this. Just like in the Matrix story, that's a real reality they're in, but the true reality is much more than that. So yeah, there's a lot of articles out there about science and psychology and stuff revolving around these movies, and they're all interesting, but they're not any. They're just they're just random articles and ideas. They're not part of a specific framework of hundreds of concepts that are all connected like this. Once you look at those two templates, the 5 levels of existence and soul, and then the Sephirot on the 10, and the 10 Sephirot that are in each one of those are the 2 main templates for the Bible, Kabbalistically, and they're the 2 main templates for the storyline. Because the timeline runs through that, the characters run through that, and everything, and their interactions run through that. Keter is kind of like the way it's kind of like this, I know this sounds ridiculous, but it's like kind of like this side of infinity. It represents the infinite, but it still in itself is not that, but it's the best we can do. So like Neo in the next movie, in each movie, he reaches that 5th level of Keter, in that he is willing to martyrdom. He's willing to give up his life. And so he's nothing. Keter is called nothingness because it represents the nothingness of pre-existence. So when you become nothing and God is everything, you're completely one. You merit moving to the next level. That's what's going on with Neo. So so when we get to I lost my train of thought, but anyhow, we get to the 3rd movie. Yeah, he again this time really does die, and that's the Keter of the 3rd level, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Fatigue. But oh yeah, so when Neo reaches he reaches this machine city in the next movie at the end, right? If you've seen it, probably, right? He reaches the machine city. And the first confusion is he's not sure what the source is, because everyone told him go to the source, and he gets to the architect level, and he seems to confuse that with the source, or but even the architect talks about the source as something separate. So there's a whole confusion there as to what's the highest level, because Neo has not made it to the source yet. Because Morpheus, did you hear Morpheus? He says, I don't understand. When the one reaches the source, the war ends. But he never reached the source. They're kind of missing that in the whole equation, in the dialogue. And so what Neo reaches in the next movie is kind of like the outer edge of infinity, if you call it that, when he gets to that machine city, and the head, the giant head, which is Golgotha. That's actually in the New Testament too, but that's a whole spiritual concept, and that's in the next movie. When he gets to that, it's kind of like he is getting to the infinite, but he's not like, you can't say that he's in that. He's simply, touching on that aspect of it. Because you don't, the 5th level is really like eternity, So this 4th level is going to be at that level of the architect, but it's also a level where things come, like I say, come unified back together. Because right now there's a disunity in everything, and particularly between the male and the female, masculine and feminine energies, which goes back to the Garden of Eden story. In the Garden of Eden story, you have the unknown. The Torah starts with a bet, not an aleph. The aleph represents that infinite that is not in the text, but we know there's something out there, but starts with in the beginning, you know, right? Bereshit. And it starts with the concept of God we can understand, which is that level of the architect or existence. But that's only there for like 4 words. Because then as soon as you get the word created, now you're in creation. And that's the level of the oracle. And that's the first time you see this creature called Ha'adam, the Adam. It's not even a proper name, Adam. It's the THE, the definitive article. The Adam is created in chapter 1 of Genesis. And it's a masculine, feminine entity together. It's not a man. It's a masculine, feminine entity. And then that's the world of Bria. Then in the second, next chapter in the Garden of Eden, where Eve, Hava, is separated from Adam, it says the verb there is Yetzera. It's Yetzera. It's that next world, that mixed world, which Garden of Eden is the mixed world, right? It's not completely spiritual. It's not physical. And Eve is separated, formed, it says, she's formed, which is Yetzirah, from Adam. And because it's the mixed world, you'll notice too that the name of God in that whole section is not Elohim anymore, but it's also not the Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh name by itself. It's the combined name. It's Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim together, all through the Garden of Eden story. That shows you again that that's that mixed combined world, which is this level. And then only when they get kicked out of the garden do they come into the physical reality, which is comparable to, you know, Malkut and everything we've been talking about, the Matrix world that they have to, you know, work. So Adam is told he has to work now, he has to figure things out. But importantly is Eve, Hava, who was on an equal par with Adam, is now diminished, right? It says you're going to have to be subservient to your husband, blah, 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 through time. So the feminine is diminished, but only for a temporary amount of time, only during the Matrix time frame. That at the end of the Matrix time frame, at the end of our world, our exile here, until we get to the Messianic era, yeah, that's the way it is. But then the feminine rises back up to a level at least equal to, if not surpassing, the masculine aspect. That's what we're in for, and that's how it's all going to play out. And we see that in the 4th movie, which would parallel this, you know, coming back to the, you know, where we started from, because although there's a major change in the characters, the female characters are all very strong, powerful lead characters in the 4th movie. You know, you have a new character called Bugs, who's very, you know, she's the prominent character in the movie. You have Niobe is now in charge as a general. You have the return of Sati, the little girl, as an adult who's critical to solving everything with the people, as I mentioned. And then Trinity is elevated to a messianic level. She's the feminine aspect of the Mashiach, right? Because that's all one. And she is elevated to a level of Neo in the 4th movie, which is real interesting because that's exactly how it's supposed to play out. So everything in that crazy 4th movie with the other, I got articles on the website. You'll find a tab called Resurrections on the Matrix4Humans site. If you go there, there's 9 articles around the 4th movie. There's one called Elevation of the Feminine, which talks about all of these concepts in detail. I'm a better writer than speaker. I don't do well speaking, and I get really, you know, tongue-tied and confused when I try to do speaking like this. I'm a better researcher and writer than I am a speaker, so I should stick to that. But I'm going to try to do videos where under calm, controlled, non-audience settings of just doing like 10 to 15 minute videos on all these concepts so they're like better explained. You know? That's the plan. Post Hanukkah, I have a friend who has the week off after Hanukkah, and we kind of agreed to spend some time doing some recording. So we'll see how that works out. We'll see.